Your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching the Yes Network, the home of champions.
He was very proud that he was a Yankee.
Fastball hit deep to right.
I don't think it was so much the pressure of playing the game of baseball, but answering the questions.
Here's a good man who got roughed up and didn't deserve it.
His situation was well tougher than ours because no one in our generation has a crown on their head.
I think it's special to have the younger generation appreciate what Dad did for baseball.
He could hit for power, field, throw, and run. A true five-tool player entering the prime of his career in the late 1950s. The only problem with Roger Maris, he wasn't a Yankee yet. Hi, I'm John Sterling for the Yes Network, and this is Yankeeography. From 1949 through 1958, the New York Yankees captured 7 World Series titles and appeared in 2 others. Truly a decade of dominance. But in 1959, the Yankees finished a disappointing 3rd, their worst finish in over 10 years.
Manager Casey Stengel led his Yankees into the 1960 season, knowing just what the team needed, a left-hand power-hitting outfielder. Yankee scouts found Stengel's man in Kansas City. His name, Roger Maris.
They really had designs on him for a long time. When he was in Cleveland and Kansas City, they liked his bat. They liked the fact that he was a pull hitter in Yankee Stadium.
I went home that winter. I'm watching the sports show, and Roger's picture came over the screen. And the Yankees had just acquired Roger Maris. And I told the wife, I'm going to buy a new car tomorrow. And she said, how do you plan to pay for it? And I said, with the World Series in October.
In his first game as a Yankee, he hit 2 home runs at Boston's Fenway Park. But it was Yankee Stadium that was home sweet home.
Maris seemed to have the right stroke for Yankee Stadium. It was a perfect marriage of hitter to ballpark.
In 1960, Roger was second in the league in home runs with 39. He led the AL in slugging percentage and RBIs. But there was another important dimension Maris brought to the Yankees.
I think what Roger brought to the team was the development of Mickey Mantle as the leader. That was the most important thing that he contributed. He allowed Mantle to finally have a guy on his own team batting behind him who would take a lot of the pressure off Mantle to win every game.
There was an article written about Roger Maris, and it was titled, Roger Maris Rejuvenates the Yankees. And this article just went on to explain Roger Maris is the key. He's the ingredient that's going to turn this team around and put them back in the World Series.
People do not realize what a sensational ball player Roger Maris was. I mean, he had a lot of tools, and we're not even talking about his home run hitting.
1960, the new outfielder played 136 games and made just 4 errors. Remarkable considering he had to adjust to the quirks of Yankee Stadium's right field.
Drive to deep right center field, way back there. And this ball is caught one-handed by Maris.
That fence out there was only 35, 36 inches high. So he knew to go back to the 344 sign and was able to rob home runs, balls that were heading into the stands.
When he wasn't robbing homers, he was gunning down base runners. His arm was being compared to some of the best in the game.
He had the greatest throwing arm of any right fielder that I'd ever seen or played with, whether it's an all-star game or against the World Series, and I include the Roberto Clementes and the Calavitas and the Al Kalines.
And he would throw bullets to third base, and it was almost a picturesque play to see Cleat catch that ball from Roger and put the tag on a runner, and I saw a number of runners slide into third base and show shock on their faces.
For a man his size, 210, 215 pounds, could fly. Great runner. Ran the bases outstandingly well.
He was a phenomenal base runner. No one in baseball at that time broke up the double play better than Roger Maris. When he went into second base, the shortstop or the second baseman who was covering the bag knew that they had to get out of the way quickly.
Roger collected a lot of hardware in 1960. He was the AL MVP, won a Gold Glove and the first of 2 Sultan of Swat awards. All this was fulfilling, but awards were never his main goal.
The first thing Roger wanted to do, he wanted to get in every World Series.
In the 1960 World Series, Roger homered in his first series at bat. But it was the last at bat by the Pirates that would settle this wild fall classic.
Mazeroski has hit a 1-0 pitch over the left field fence at Forbes Field to win the 1960 World Series for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
So the Yankee season ended on a sour note, but they would be back and better than ever in 1961. That's because Roger Maris was just getting started.
The New York Yankees go through spring drills at St. Petersburg, Florida, where they prepare for a grueling season of baseball. 8 additional games are on the 1961 schedule to allow for the league's expansion. As in the past, the Bronx Bombers will be ready, willing, and walloping.
After the tough World Series loss in 1960, the 61 season opened with MVP Roger Maris and home run leader Mickey Mantle ready to help the Yankees defend their American League pennant.
Ralph Houk decided early on in spring training that he would get more out of both of them by batting Roger third and Mickey fourth.
I got an awful lot of mail on that. There was a lot of fans and people that thought Mickey would hit more home runs if he hit the other way around. But there's one thing they forget, that behind him was Yogi and Howard and Blanchard, so it wouldn't have really made that much difference.
What did make a difference for Maris was a precarious situation for his wife and family just as spring training started.
I was expecting Randy, who was going to be my 4th child, and our car broke down in Dothan, Alabama. So by the time we got to spring training, I had lots of problems threatening miscarriage. And then I tried to go to New York to find a place to live, and that was really tough when you have 3 little children, another one on the way. It's pretty hard to find a furnished place to rent. They kind of look at you like, who's coming up the walk?
So instead, the Maris family returned to Kansas City, and the season opened in spectacular fashion. From the early going, it looked like Mantle might repeat as the league's top home run hitter.
Well, Mickey got started off good that year, and Roger got started off not very good at all.
I think he had 1 home run almost through April, and he was beginning to worry about it was time to be traded again, because he had been traded 3 times in 3 years. And then he got called into the office. He said, oh, here I go again. Well, they just sat down and talked to him, told him forget the average, go swing for the fences.
There's one. It is deep to right field, and that ball is going, and it is gone.
Near the midpoint of the season, both Mantle and Maris, dubbed the M&M boys by the press, were ahead of the Babes' record pace.
June was a real hot month. He hit 15 that month. It was during, and he had one streak where he hit 6 homers in 7 days, which was the first home run record he had ever broken.
Roger Maris is possibly the next Yankee Babe Ruth of baseball. He's ahead of the immortal Babe's home run pace set back in 1927 when Mr. Baseball hit his record of 60.
To watch Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle challenge for the home run mark, chase the ghost of Babe Ruth, and it did literally seem like every day that summer, one of those guys hit a home run.
I couldn't wait to get to the park to get the game started fast enough because I wanted to watch who was next. And it was really exciting for all of us. We had good seats.
The M&M boys had become the biggest story of the summer. Mickey Mantle was the Yankees, the Now he had a hard-hitting partner in Roger Maris.
Maris probably had as much to do with making Mantle a hero in New York as anybody, because Maris was challenging the one record that I think most people didn't want broken.
At the time, Mickey Mantle used to get booed a lot, but when Roger came over and they started going for the record, all of Mickey's boos went to cheers, and then Roger picked up on the boos.
Like virtually every Yankee fan I knew, I rooted for Mantle. It wasn't that I disliked Maris, but Mantle was our guy.
You could tell that they wanted, you know, Mickey to do it, and he understood that, but it was, I think it was hard to not really have the backing of the fans.
Roger ignored the boos and helped the Yankees get back into familiar territory.
Roger, your bat has helped the Yankees move into first place this year. How do you feel about being with the first place New York Yankees?
Well, Bob, it feels real good, I'd say, after playing on, well, a couple of second division ball clubs for the last 3 years. To be up with a ball club that's got possibilities of a pennant, it feels real good.
Roger, he was interested in winning a pennant, and I don't really think he ever thought he had a shot at the record. I mean, you know, he's ahead of Babe Ruth's pace and all that, but I mean, in your mind, you keep saying nobody's ever done it, nobody's ever done it. And
how about the home run situation, Roger? You're 7 games ahead of Babe Ruth's record. Do you think that you can beat the Babe's record?
Well, I don't think so, Bob. Of course, I'm not going to shoot for it. Babe had a real hot month in the month of September. He hit, I think, 17 home runs, and that's quite a feat in itself, and I don't think I can break it.
Chasing home run records was new territory for Roger, but he wasn't alone. Mantle was there almost every step of the way. Some saw it as a rivalry, but the reality was a close friendship.
First of all, I think they both thought it was a lot of fun.
They both respected each other, you know, for what they could do and what they did.
They understood each other quite well and got along real well. Never anyone pulling against the other one or anything like that. You're just trying to win ball games, and that's the way they both were.
I think the proof of the pudding is that they roomed together for 3 or 4 months.
It was Roger's idea. Roger and I would have lunch, and Roger said, let's take Mickey to the apartment. We picked up Mickey to St. Moritz, and beginning he didn't like it. You know, Mickey was used to Broadway and so on. But he got adapted to it, and Mickey lived there.
There was a lot written that we didn't like each other, that we argued a lot or fought a lot or something. That's the farthest thing from the truth.
Roger did the cooking, which was not bad, not good. And they got along great.
Still to come.
We had $300, so we got married. And then he made Cleveland the next year. So I told him it's because he married me, he made the majors.
We now return to Yankeeography. Long before the glories of '61 was a childhood spent in Fargo, North Dakota, where Roger grew up in a very athletic family.
Their dad had been a fine baseball coach and had done a very intense job, I think, with the boys, and they had the talent to follow through on it.
During the summer, he was an American Legion baseball standout. But when it came to the school year, Roger was so serious about athletics, he transferred to Shanley High.
In fact, he had a great football career, and that was pretty much why they switched. So yeah, it kind of hurt the others at the public school when they did switch.
Roger not only got more playing time on Shanley's teams, but it was there that he would meet his future wife, Pat.
Roger and I met in high school. I was in 9th grade and he was in 10th grade. We met at a basketball game. One of the other students introduced us.
With his sweetheart by his side, Roger became a football star and was recruited by the University of Oklahoma in his senior year.
He did decide to go to Oklahoma to play football because he had a football scholarship there. But then when he got there, he also had a baseball contract waiting for him back, and he just decided college wasn't for him and went back and signed the baseball contract.
Cleveland came calling, and Roger's pro career would begin in 1953 on his own terms. He got to play minor league ball in his hometown.
I forget now where they were going to send him, but he asked if he just couldn't come back and play in his hometown. And they really didn't like to do that because they thought players wouldn't do as well, but he did.
Roger quickly shot up the ranks of the Cleveland minor league system. Meanwhile, things were getting interesting in his personal life as well.
He had played 4 years in the minor leagues before we got married, and then they had won the Little World Series in Indianapolis. And so we had $300, so we got married. And then he made Cleveland the next year. So I told him it's because he married me, he made the majors.
Roger had a solid rookie season for the '57 Indians. The young outfielder played the game hard, maybe a little too hard, as injuries would limit him to 116 games. He did live up to the Indians' expectations, but in a calculated move the next season, Cleveland traded him to Kansas City.
When Cleveland traded Roger to Kansas City, I think what they were saying was, we don't want to be embarrassed in Cleveland with our fans trading this great potential home run hitter to the Yankees, and then, of course, having the Yankees beat us again with a guy that we had.
It was June of '58 when Roger arrived in Kansas City, a place that felt like home. But the A's were a team known to deal a lot of their prospects to the Yankees.
He went to Kansas City, and that became a much more comfortable place for him, and it was very little press attention.
Kansas City's a great town. Great people there, so they really made you feel at home, and he loved playing in Kansas City. We kind of thought when we got traded to Kansas City that would be home for a while, but it was a year and a half, and that was all.
But as many suspected all along, the Yankee scouts would have their way. After a short stint in Kansas City, Roger and his family learned he was headed for the Bronx.
We weren't real thrilled at first because we thought we'd be there maybe for a few years. So we were kind of upset about that, but then he knew that it would be probably a good move for him.
Coming up next.
The world was changing. It was becoming a media society. And here's Maris becoming a media figure, and he hates it.
Welcome back to Yankeeography. When a 25-year-old rising star was traded in '59 from the Kansas City A's, an American League also ran, to the storied New York Yankees, many thought the quiet Midwesterner was given the chance of a lifetime. But Roger Maris didn't necessarily see it that way. To play in New York would also mean that Roger would have to live in New York, a place he found quite uncomfortable. For Roger, it was simple. He just wanted to go about his business on the ball field and then go home. But Maris won an MVP award his first season in pinstripes and followed that up in '61 with 33 home runs by the All-Star break, all of which made the glare of the spotlight impossible to avoid.
I joined the team in mid-season. The only instructions I had were I had to write about Mantle and Maris every day, something about them, whether they hit a home run or struck out 4 times.
You've got to understand the world was changing. It was becoming a media society. One of the great early events of the media society was the Maris-Mantle Home Run Derby.
The big Yankee news is Maris 56, Mantle 53, and a goal of 60, New York's commonplace.
Maris is becoming a media figure, and he hates it.
All your time before the ball game is spent with the photographers, and after the ball game it's the writers, and before the game it's the writers.
As the pressure mounted, so did the expectations and the comparisons to the legendary Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth was the most charismatic character in the history of baseball. Open, funny, loud, an American icon. Roger Maris neither had that personality nor had that character.
Well, I don't think I've really had Mr. Ruth on my mind at the time. I was trying to hit the ball and hit it solid.
We were disappointed, we the press, because Roger wasn't what we wanted him to be. And Roger was simply being honest to himself.
When injuries forced Mantle out of the race in mid-September, Roger then had to face the strain of pursuing Ruth's record on his own.
Maris's hair, indeed, some people think that's a myth. His hair did fall out in clumps and patches from the tension, from the strain.
And it's number 58 for Roger Maris, his 58th home run of the year.
Commissioner Ford Frick announced that Ruth's record would only fall if a player could hit more than 60 homers in the same number of games as Ruth 154. This was the controversy of the famous asterisk, which was never actually used in the record books. Thanks to Frick's ruling, the pressure on Roger was the heaviest on the day of the 154th game. He had 58 home runs, and the tension at Baltimore's Memorial Stadium was palpable.
That 154th game was the weirdest night I ever spent in a ballpark, and I spent many of them. It was eerie. I mean, people seem to be walking on tiptoes. He's sitting in the clubhouse. Everybody's afraid to talk to him.
It's like yesterday that I see him walk into my office and say, "Skip," he says, "I just can't make it tonight." We discussed it, and I said, "You know, Roger, the stands are full of people." I said, "They're out there, a lot of them, just because of you." So he said, "Okay." And so he went out to play the right field, and when he come in, he didn't look at me, and I didn't look at him, and I just left him in.
And it's a good thing Houck did leave Roger in the game, as number 59 came on his second at-bat.
There's one. It is going. It is going. It is gone. Number 59.
The standard of baseball excellence from 1927 on, 60 home runs was on his bat.
But on that damp night in Baltimore, number 60 was not meant to be. Maris' big night ended with a check swing dribbler back to the mound.
You could almost visually see from upstairs in the press box the air going out of Roger's body, the gasp.
The Yankees clinched the pennant in game 154, but what mattered most was that Ruth's record was now safe. There were still 8 more games remaining for Maris, and home run number 60 would come 6 days later in New York.
A standing ovation for Roger Maris.
When the game was over, they brought Mrs. Ruth down by the clubhouse, and Raj, he whispered something in her ear. He said, "Mrs. Ruth, don't feel badly. Nobody will replace the Babe."
On October 1st, 1961, the final day of the regular season, just over 23,000 fans came to Yankee Stadium to see Roger break the immortal Babe Ruth's home run record in the 4th inning.
I remember being there when he hit his 61st home run. No fooling, I was there.
You never knew when to expect it, so whenever Roger came to bat, you were up for it, and each pitch meant so much.
They're standing up, waiting to see if Maris is going to hit number 61. Here's the windup. Fastball hit deep to right. This could be it. Way back there. Oh, now it's
I was so proud of it, and the way he acted, you know, run around the bases just like he always did. I even cried.
I will never forget that after he shook hands with the Bat Boy and Yogi Berra, before he got to the dugout, one fan ran out onto the field and congratulated him. I was 13 and I wanted to be that fan, and I still want to be that fan.
When I came in, of course, the people kept clapping, the guys trying to push me out of the dugout, and really, I was embarrassed to go out there.
And everybody looked down the bench at Roger, and Roger just sat in his same spot, and you could just see this sigh of relief go, it's over.
The fact that Maris would power the Yankees to another World Series in '61 was somehow anticlimactic. Ironically, whatever Roger would do on the field from this point on would somehow pale in comparison to his new home run record. Roger Maris was now the home run king, and with it came unwanted fame.
After he broke that record, he was now the biggest name in baseball. So when spring training then rolled around, Roger wrongly thought that all of the media attention was going to stop. And in fact, it didn't.
That's when he started to have conflicts with writers, many prominent columnists. And the conflict was rooted in the fact that he felt badly used.
I don't feel I did anything with the media to get what they gave me.
After an off-season of being in heavy demand, Roger reached his saturation point. Always more comfortable on the field, He hoped a strong showing in '62 would ease growing tensions with the media.
As long as we were winning, he was happy. He had like 32, 33 home runs. As far as he felt, he had a good year, but of course it wasn't good enough for the writers, and that bothered him a lot.
The press labeled him flop of the year, so to speak, and I thought he had a tremendous year.
Even a strong performance in the World Series that year and a second straight title did little to prevent his downward spiral in New York.
Roger's career with the Yankees really ended after the 1962 season. Physically, he seemed worn out. He wasn't the same player that he was.
Truthfully, I think all the pressure had just worn him out. Mentally beat.
Though he hit 23 homers in just 90 games in '63, it was the first of 4 painful seasons to come.
The years after '61, I think, were very hard because he did have a lot of injuries.
The '63 World Series underscored Rogers' difficulties. He was injured in Game 2 and the Yanks got swept. The press pointed fingers, and his status as a Yankee legend continued to diminish.
As that happened in '62, '63, Maris was sort of a target.
He began to get this reputation of being surly and nasty. And Roger wasn't like that at all.
It was unfair because he was very popular with his teammates. I mean, everyone liked Roger very much.
He was great. What the heck, Roger? When I made it in '64, you know, Mickey got hurt there. I had put Mickey in right, and I put Roger. He said, all right, put me out there, leave me alone.
Always the team player, Roger did move to center and had a great year. The '64 World Series would be his final postseason in pinstripes. After an aging Yankee team lost in 7 games, there were more injuries ahead for Roger.
I really lost it in '65 when I broke my hand because I lost the strength in these 2 fingers and to try and swing a bat with only like a half a hand almost. You know, everything just went right downhill after I broke my hand there.
A lot of people thought that he really wasn't given 100%. He was faking injuries or jaking a little bit, and it turned out at the end of the year they found out that he had a broken bone in his hand that kept him from swinging the bat the way that he was capable of swinging.
In '65 and '66, Maris played just 165 games and hit only 21 home runs. It was soon clear that his time in New York was coming to an end.
He was quite angry and alienated in that last part of his time in New York.
The way it ended was really ugly. According to Roger, they had concealed an injury from him so that he would continue to play, but boy, the estrangement was immediate and he couldn't get out of town fast enough. And what a terrible shame after all he'd contributed to the Yankees that it should end that way.
We now return to Yankeeography. By the mid-'60s, Roger's glory days were fading in New York as his home run numbers diminished. He was unhappy with his situation and wanted out of the Big Apple.
In 1966, July of '66, I went ahead and told the Yankees that right at the All-Star break that I was not going to play in '67.
But the Yankees didn't want word to get out that Maris was suddenly going to retire, so they managed to trade him.
He had fully decided to retire. And then when we discussed the deal, he agreed to go to St. Louis.
Though St. Louis seemed perfect because he'd be close to his family in Kansas City, Roger was still reluctant to keep playing because of the relentless criticism by the media.
I was getting ripped a lot by the press at that point, so now I had to figure what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to give them more ammunition to make me look bad or go ahead and play here. So I decided to go ahead and play here.
He went to a franchise which recognized and appreciated his historic role. The manager of the Cardinals, Red Schoendienst, told Roger he would fit in very nicely with this group of players.
We found out in a big hurry what a good person Roger Maris was and what a good ball player he was.
Mike Shannon is the key guy in that situation because Mike Shannon was willing to change positions, go to third base for the Cardinals where he hadn't played, and Mike Shannon showed me all the bruises on his chest. When you play third base, you take a pounding, and he said, these all belong to Roger. He went to third base, Roger went to right field, and he was wonderfully happy there.
happy on the field and at home. In 1967, Maris and his family had good times ahead.
And those were 2 good years because we could go see him on the road trip, you know, when he was at home.
He was happy with that because we were over in Kansas City. We could drive over and be over there and stay over there for the summer. Basically, the most important thing that stood out in my mind was playing the father-son games in St. Louis, and that was just a blast. We'd get dressed up in our little Cardinal uniforms, and all my brothers and I would go out there and play.
Returning to the Midwest seemed to revitalize Maris, and he was the final piece in the puzzle for a Cardinals team going from 6th place to the World Series.
I'm not worried about the Yankees as the president. I'm worried about the Cardinals, and we're looking forward to the World Series.
In the Fall Classic against Boston, he hit .385 with a homer and 7 RBIs.
Roger swings, and there it goes.
Roger would earn his 3rd World Series ring behind the clutch Game 7 pitching of an unhittable Bob Gibson.
The Cardinals win. They're the new world champions.
After playing the 1 year, it was an enjoyable year, but even though I did help the ball club, it was not the type of thing that I wanted to be doing.
For Roger, it was time to look ahead to a future without baseball.
The key to Roger's joy with the St. Louis Cardinals, his financial future was made secure by Gussie Busch, the owner of the Cardinals, the beer baron.
Roger and his brother had been looking into trying to find a beer distributorship. He said that, well, if you play 1 more year for us, if one opens up, we'll see that you can buy into that. So that's why he played another year.
1 more year, of course, meant 1 more World Series for Roger.
And the 65th World Series of baseball is about to get underway.
The 1968 World Series would be Roger's 7th and final Fall Classic. Unfortunately, the Cardinals would fall to Detroit in 7. Now, Roger could look ahead to his future as a businessman.
When he retired in '68, he got a beer franchise in Florida, so his financial future was set.
And we came to Gainesville. We hated leaving Kansas City, but you go where your livelihood is, and that's what we did.
Roger made a smooth transition into life after baseball as he focused on running a beer distributorship in Florida.
Really, I've enjoyed the business I'm in right now, selling Budweiser too much. I really haven't missed the baseball end of it.
Coming to Florida was kind of nice.
When we retired to Florida, you know, he just felt like, you know, we got away from everything, and which he really wanted to do.
Though he frequently visited friends at Cardinals spring training, Roger had put baseball behind him and was enjoying his retirement. But there was still lingering bitterness about the way he left New York.
The Yankees had asked Roger to come back many times for Old Timers Day or different festivities, but he just really didn't care to go back to Yankee Stadium.
I used to invite him to Old Timers Day every year, and then he would just say, "Nah, I don't think so, Marty. It's just, I don't want to go back there and get booed."
I think he was very concerned about going back, about the reaction that the fans would give him because, you know, the terms that he left on weren't the best.
In 1973, George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees. He was a fan of the rich history of the franchise, and one of his goals was to get Roger to come back to Yankee Stadium.
At that time, they were trying to build a high school baseball team here, and we needed money for it.
I said, what would it take to get you back up that I do for the school?
And so Roger said, well, if I come back to Yankee Stadium, will you make a donation to this baseball field?
He said, light the field for the new stadium, I'll come up.
So he did, and so that's when Roger went back.
Unsure of how he'd be received, Roger was a surprise guest for the 1978 home opener. It turned out to be a banner day.
Mickey was there, and the two of them walked out to center field, hoisted the World Championship flag. That was a great moment.
They cheered him like I've never heard. I started crying.
The bad feelings about New York were gone, and there was nothing sweeter than seeing the M&M boys together again.
I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I think baseball's been great to me.
It
It was a relief off of Roger, because he really wanted to come back.
All of the weight that he had carried from 1961 on seemed finally to go.
Roger then became a fixture at Yankee old-timers games. It was almost as if he'd never left.
When he went back to Yankee Stadium and hung around with the guys, you could just tell that he was proud to be a Yankee.
But then in 1983, doctors told Roger he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Just hearing the word cancer, no one likes to hear that.
Cancer hits where you least expect it.
I was devastated. It's tough. It's tough.
1 year later, Maris returned to the Bronx for the ultimate Yankee honor. His number 9 was retired.
That was probably one of the most proud moments of his baseball career.
This is a big highlight for me. I am very proud, very happy.
It was good that it was done, you know, at the time it was done for him, because it meant a lot to him.
In December of 1985, Roger Eugene Maris lost his battle with cancer.
It went in remission twice, but each time it came back worse, so we knew it wasn't going to be long.
Cancer's a tough disease, and to watch somebody die, that's really tough.
Roger's teammates were devastated by the loss of their very good friend.
You know, truthfully, it was like losing my brother.
Roger was a great man, a great father. I knew I'd do that.
Several Yankee legends made the solemn sojourn to Fargo, North Dakota, braving the harsh winter elements to attend the funeral.
Fargo, North Dakota, you know, it's way up there in the north, and not a lot of people go to North Dakota, but to be able to see all these people converge on one small town in North Dakota, just pay their last respects to him, I mean, it's pretty emotional.
You felt like, well, they really cared about him.
It was more of a tribute to Roger Maris the person than it was to Roger Maris the ball player.
And if you can call a funeral a fine moment, Roger's funeral is one of the finest moments of his life, because the way he faced death was with tremendous bravery.
Roger's indomitable spirit and passion for the game lives on in Florida, where his son Kevin coaches high school baseball.
I think it's pretty special to have the younger generation understand and kind of appreciate what Dad did for baseball. It's special, you know, to be able to play on a field your father's name's on it. I remember me and Dad and my brothers laying saw it on that field.
Hey, throw it through the shortstop's head now.
I'll have kids come up to the park and recognize the name. They'll come up and ask if that's my father. And it is nice to see the young kids know who Dad was.
Still to come.
No one hopes any more than Mark McGwire that this will put Roger Maris in his rightful place in baseball's Hall of Fame.
Mark McGwire did a tremendous job bringing attention back to my father.
For 37 years, no one mounted a serious challenge to Roger Maris' single-season home run record. But in 1998, the 61 mark was in jeopardy.
Everybody was thinking this is the year it's going to happen, because it's an expansion year, and the year that Maris did it was an expansion year.
Here's McGwire, the pitch. Swing, and it's third home run of the night. It's going to go into the upper deck. Wow!
I was the man tabbed since January of that year to break the record.
Big Mac quickly fulfilled those early expectations, launching long balls at a pace well ahead of Roger's magic run in '61.
And the 2-1 pitch. Breaking ball hit deep to left field. Number 50 for Mark McGwire.
But just as Maris had Mantle, Mark McGwire had Sammy Sosa, who hit an amazing 20 homers in June.
Swung on, there's a drive. Deep toward left. Hey, Sosa has another
lemon sauce that was so much fun to watch that I know Roger would have just loved it.
What a show these two guys are putting on. Man, oh man, you just couldn't write it any better.
Every night I go home and I'm trying to watch Baseball Tonight, Sports Center, and trying to see what Maguire do.
Here's the pitch. Swing it. There it goes. Wake up, Babe Ruth. There's company coming. It's Mark McGwire with number 60.
McGwire got what this meant to baseball, and the fact that McGwire connected to the Maris family as he got close to this record helped him.
Mark's really brought Roger Maris, the ball player, and Roger Maris, the person, to light.
In the same city where Roger ended his career, McGwire was destined to make history.
Big O set to go. The pitch. Swung on, belted. There it goes. There it goes. He did it.
McGwire's flight 61 headed for Planet Maris. History. Bedlam. What a moment. Pardon me while I stand up and applaud.
In front of the Maris family and the world, Mark personally saluted Roger.
He pointed up to the sky, tapped his heart, and the way I interpreted that was his acknowledging Dad, saying Dad was in his heart. In such a big moment in Mark McGwire's life, to include that in that special moment was something we'll never forget.
Next for Big Mac, number 62, making him the all-time single-season home run king.
First pitch, rocket deep toward left. He did it! He did it! Number 62 for Mark McGwire. A slice of history and a magical moment in St. Louis.
For him to acknowledge our family and then point to the skies and say, you know, your dad's in my heart, that was just something that will stay with me forever.
Equally touching was the sight of McGwire leaving the field to embrace Roger's family in the stands.
No one hopes any more than Mark McGwire that this will put Roger Maris in his rightful place in baseball's Hall of Fame.
When McGwire came over and came back out of the dugout and gave us all a hug, I was too choked up to even say anything.
As I went over to the box and talked to Roger's kids, I told them today when I met with the Hall of Fame, they pulled out Roger's bat when he hit his 61st home run. And I touched it. And I touched it with my heart. Now I can honestly say that my bat will lie next to his, and I'm damn proud of it.
What Mark's done really is it's kind of elevated Dad to a new plateau, and it's given him, I think, the due that he never really got. I think it's brought a lot of attention back to Dad and making people realize just what a great feat that was. As much as Roger Maris, the ball player, we cherish keeping the record, he'd be very proud of Mark for achieving that success.
Just 3 years later, more home run history.
There's a high drive deep into right center field to the big part of the ballpark. Number 71. Barry Bonds is the new king of the home run world.
Barry Bonds understood the magnitude of his achievement and what Roger Maris had gone through some 40 years before him.
I believe that his situation was well tougher than ours because no one in our generation has a crown on their head. The only one who ever had a crown on their head is Babe Ruth. So, I mean, that's pretty hard to deal with when you're knocking what the Yankee families consider their king's record down.
Since the Babe bashed 60 homers in 1927, 3 other men have been crowned the single-season home run king. But it was Roger Maris who held the crown the longest, 37 years. And who knows, that is one legacy he just might hold on to forever.
Besides his home run exploits, Maris was a true all-around player, with 2 league MVPs and a Gold Glove to his credit. He also was a driving force on 7 pennant winners and 3 world championship teams. The game was easy for Maris. Coping with his fame was not. For the Yes Network, I'm John Sterling, and thanks for watching Yankeeography.
proceeding has been an exclusive presentation of the Yes Network.